Imagine a world where the Central Powers triumphed over the Allies in the Great War. How would it have reshaped the course of history as we know it? The ripple effects of such a victory could have fundamentally altered our global landscape. Today, we'll look into alternate history to see Germany winning World War I and explore how this could have been achieved, the immediate geopolitical and territorial consequences, and the long-term impact on our world today. And just a hint for you, there wouldn't be a certain Austrian painter holding all the levers of power, but we'll come back to that in a bit. As we know in our timeline, the Great War ended when Germany surrendered to the Allies and was subsequently blamed for starting the war and charged with huge reparation payments which destroyed its economy. The Great Depression later on did not help with the economic situation, and the nation looked for a strongman leader to bring back the old glory. But today none of that will be the case, as Germany and its allies won the war and got all the perks that come with a victory. So get your popcorn ready and let's dive into this alternate history scenario. First, we're going to talk about how victory could have been achieved in the first place. The year is 1915 and the Theschen Plan is the name of the game. The Theschen Plan was Germany's strategic blueprint for a quick victory over France by sweeping through Belgium and encircling Paris. The plan was first proposed in 1905 by Field Marshal Alfred von Schlieffen. For Germany to win World War I, the successful execution of this plan was crucial. In this scenario, the German army avoids delays and logistical issues, and they end up encircling and defeating the French forces swiftly, forcing France to surrender early in the war. This rapid victory in the West would have freed German troops to reinforce the Eastern Front, preventing a prolonged two-front war. The early fall of Paris would have demoralized the Allies and potentially led to a negotiated peace favorable to Germany. Another critical factor would have been preventing the United States from joining the conflict. Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare and the Zimmermann telegram were key provocations that led to U.S. involvement. In this timeline, Germany limits or avoids altogether its submarine attacks on civilian and neutral ships. Additionally, refraining from the Zimmermann telegram, which proposed a German-Mexican alliance against the U.S., which would have been impossible to achieve anyways given the logistics of the time period. Without U.S. military and economic support, the Allies might have struggled to sustain their war effort, potentially leading to a Central Powers victory. Also, quick success on the Eastern Front against Russia would be vital for Germany's overall strategy. Germany secures decisive victories and forces Russia into an earlier and more comprehensive peace settlement, such as the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. This treaty already resulted in significant territorial gains for Germany, but an even earlier and more favorable settlement could have further weakened the Russian war effort and morale. This would have allowed Germany to redeploy troops to the Western Front earlier, strengthening their position against the Allies and tipping the balance in their favor. Now, in order to win, you also need to score large on the diplomatic front, as well, not only on the battlefield. In this arena too, Germany would have done a few things that weren't feasible in our timeline. The first of those would be quick peace treaties signed with certain allies. Diplomatic efforts to exploit divisions among the allies would lead to separate peace agreements with countries like Italy or Japan. These treaties would isolate Britain and France, weakening their coalition. Germany successfully leverages diplomatic channels to negotiate armistices or peace deals, therefore completely shifting the war dynamics, reducing the overall opposition and leading to a more manageable conflict for the Central Powers. The other thing on the diplomatic front would be leveraging nationalist movements within the Austro-Hungarian Empire or encouraging dissent within the British and French colonies to create internal pressures that distract and weaken the Allied war effort. By supporting revolutions, independence movements, or even internal political factions sympathetic to peace, Germany destabilizes its enemies from within. This strategy diverts resources and attention away from the front lines and makes it easier for Germany to achieve military successes. Okay, so now that we have a winning path for the Central Powers, however likely or unlikely you believe it is, tell us in the comments. What would the immediate consequences be? The most obvious one would be territorial gains. The Treaty of Versailles, under vastly different terms, sees Germany annexing parts of Belgium and France, such as Alsace-Lorraine, which was already a contentious region due to its strategic and economic importance. Additionally, Germany demands control over key industrial areas in northern France, such as the coal-rich regions of the Saar Basin and possibly the resource-abundant region of Lorraine. These annexations dramatically alter the map of Western Europe, consolidating German power and influence over its neighbors. And speaking of influence, Germany and its allies establish a new balance of power heavily skewed in their favor. The triumph of the Central Powers results in the formation of a German-dominated European bloc, potentially including Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. Britain and France, having suffered significant military and economic losses, would be politically and economically weakened, reducing their global influence. The defeated Allied powers struggle to rebuild, while Germany capitalizes on its newfound dominance to set the terms of peace and reconstruction in Europe, leading to a prolonged period of German hegemony. With regards to the Russian Revolution of 1917, while it still happens in this alternate timeline, it has different consequences. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, signed in March 1918, already ceded vast territories to Germany. However, a more decisive and earlier German victory prevents the Bolsheviks from consolidating power. Germany may support anti-Bolshevik forces or establish puppet regimes in the ceded territories, leading to a fragmented Russia. For instance, Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states might have become semi-independent buffer states under German influence. The stability of such an arrangement significantly alters the course of the Russian Civil War and the eventual formation of the Soviet Union. On the colonial front, the colonial map of the world would be dramatically redrawn in favor of Germany and its allies. Victorious Central Powers would likely demand the transfer of British, French, and Belgian colonies in Africa and Asia. For example, German East Africa could have been expanded to include British East Africa, modern-day Kenya, and German Southwest Africa might have incorporated parts of British and Belgian colonies. The Pacific territories, including parts of British and French Oceania, could have come under German control, but this may be a stretch. This redistribution intensifies competition among colonial powers and possibly leads to increased exploitation and conflict within the colonies as Germany sought to consolidate its new acquisitions. In addition, we can expect colonization to last longer than it did in our timeline. The Central Powers, bolstered by their success, strive to maximize their economic exploitation of colonies to recover from the war's financial costs and solidify their global influence. This period could have seen a tightening of colonial grips, delaying independence for many regions by decades. Now let's shift to the long-term consequences and the world today as a result. German victory in World War I increases the chances of autocratic regimes around the world. The success of the German Empire, an authoritarian monarchy itself, would have served as a model for other nations, legitimizing autocratic governance over democratic institutions. Countries like Italy, Spain, and Eastern European states embrace authoritarian rule to align themselves with Germany's dominant political ideology. The fascist movement in Italy, which gained prominence in the 1920s, receives more direct support from a victorious Germany, accelerating Benito Mussolini's rise to power. The trend towards authoritarianism stifles the spread of democratic ideals and delays the formation of democratic institutions across Europe. Next, we see the creation of economic blocs centered around Berlin. A German-led European economic community emerges much earlier than the European Union, but with a more authoritarian and protectionist bent. This bloc integrates the economies of the Central Powers and potentially includes neutral states like Sweden and Switzerland, seeking to benefit from trade with the dominant power. The economic policies focus on self-sufficiency and militarization, fostering rapid industrial growth, but also leading to significant economic disparities within Europe. This German-centric economic bloc challenges the global economic order, competing directly with the British Empire and the United States, and potentially preventing the latter from becoming the dominant global economic power in the 20th century. But what about the Cold War? Does it still happen? Sure, but the players are different from our timeline. We expect to see tripartite global tension between Germany, the United States, and possibly a fragmented or authoritarian Russia. If the Bolsheviks are prevented from consolidating power, Russia evolves into several competing states or fall under German influence. This would alter the binary US-Soviet Cold War into a more complex and multipolar conflict. Spycraft, nuclear arms races, and proxy wars might still occur, but with different players and locations. For example, the Korean War might involve German interests in East Asia, and the Cuban Missile Crisis revolves around German and American tensions rather than Soviet-American ones. The ideological battle would be democracy versus authoritarianism, rather than capitalism versus communism. NATO doesn't form, but instead we see Germany and its allies form an equivalent military bloc. The United Nations structure might also change, with a stronger emphasis on German interests. There would be no permanent Security Council members, except maybe Germany. Germany's role as a global arbiter and peacekeeper would shape international relations, leading to different resolutions and approaches to global issues like climate change, human rights, and trade. Most importantly of all, without the humiliating loss in World War I, Hitler's rise does not happen, and neither do the National Socialists. With the economy going well after the victory in World War I, there are no grievances he can use to rise to power. We may still see a second world war between the Allies and the German alliance if nukes aren't yet invented. If they are invented, then we go directly to Cold War. So what do you think? Let us know in the comments, and also like and subscribe if you enjoyed our content, and let us know what other topics to discuss in the future. Take care, everyone.